Good morning, Thomas.
Good morning, Steve. How you doing?
Good, been loving your stuff lately, man. Seriously, I've just been. And by the way, I don't know why I haven't got a renewal in a while. I don't know when I have to renew for AFI. I don't know if your guy on that is keeping up on that. I don't know. Shouldn't that be automatic?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if you have to renew if like when it comes to renewing that already passed and but we can get into that discussion another time. How we're revamping the membership program.
Yeah, because
I mean,
you know, I support you, and I'm gonna keep renewing. So.
Yeah, exactly. I'm not really worried about that. And what was it? It's just been a whole day of X Spaces. I got one I'm hosting at 2:15 Eastern.
Yeah, I just saw that you posted it. What's going to be on?
So, yeah, Ali Rizvi. Yeah. So we were supposed to pre-record for a release at 2 p.m. For my YouTube show on the AFL channel, but my laptop has been like acting on Fritz today. So I'm like, I don't want to be that guy that like pushes him back more and more and more. Because I like Ali and I originally reached out about having him on, but like for these past few weeks, I've actually had to push him off more and more because I've been so swamped.
You have been swamped, man. You've been keeping busy.
A little too busy. Too many things happening. But it's just part of the grind, part of the whole politics, culture war stuff that you and I are in. So
I don't do the politics, man. I don't do the culture war politics as much as you do. You're in the front space for that. So,
well, I call all this, it's all the same thing. Like, you know, we're all debating and talking about ideas and in the whole space of non-religiosity and secularism and, you know, contentious, controversial topics, I guess you could say.
Do you know that I officially joined the Satanic Temple the other day too?
Oh wow!
Yeah,
really?
and I get it's a little bit of a grift. I get that. I mean, you get a little card, and of course, I don't actually follow the strict things for the Satanic Temple. And there's one tenet that I wish they would change a little bit, but I really appreciate the fact that they want to keep secularism in the forefront and avoid having this encroachment of Christianity. By the way, I'm gonna start it now.
I'm
real quick.
on everything except on the name, and there's been some controversy relating to them too.
I know there always is.
You probably remember the whole David Silverman situation from a little over a year ago, where like his Lucian's board saw that he took a photo, you know, and the board they're pretty much just like American Atheists and AHA, like some of the people there.
I know.
I'm not talking about the members. I don't know much about the membership. I don't know much. I don't know too much about Lucian to paint him as an individual with a bad brush, but like some of the board members, you know, they're all into social justice stuff, and they saw that Lucian took a photo with Dave, and that was a news story. That was, I think that was on
that's ridiculous.
Website, Fox News' website. That became a thing, but people forget.
I don't even get that. I mean, I've been on Dave's show. Dave's been on my channel. I happen to always, believe it or not, and then I'll probably even keep this in the YouTube video because I think this is important stuff. Then I'll get Chris to join in here. But I believe it or not, you know, I've always kind of gone along with Dave. We didn't agree, obviously, because you know he has been indoctrinated in the whole new atheist TM type ideology. But you know, he was always kind to me. He didn't make it personal. And that's what I respect about people. You don't have to agree with somebody, but when you start making it personal, I just avoid it anymore. I completely shut it down. It's not worth the time. I'm not here to try to convince people of things that like 1 + 1 = 2. If they don't want to believe that, if they want to believe newspeak and 2 + 2 = 5, I'm not going to be able to change their mind. I will try initially. That's the best I can do. But Thomas, I'm telling you, David has always been kind to me. He's never not been.
Yeah.
Why would I find it an affront for Lucy to talk to him?
The false allegations that happened against him in 2018 that booted him out, and the whole he's not into the social justice stuff, and he also politically has some views that are different than their personal political views, so therefore he is racist, sexist, homophobic.
Unbelievable. He's none of those things, and clearly all those allegations were not only proven to be false. The person admitted they were false. He was cleared 100%. So,
100%, but they don't care. Yeah, so like that's why like I heard Lucian is a cool guy. I don't know much about the membership of that org, but like I'm glad that like if there is some good being done there, that's a great.
I just want to support him. Like I said, Lucian has always been kind to me. He was a great guest, one of the smartest guests I've ever interviewed. He really is a smart dude. I think you and him would get along exceptionally well because both of you are brilliant.
Yeah.
But anyways, we're here today for Chris. Hi, Chris.
Hi, how you doing? Can you hear me?
Yes, excellent. So let me give you guys
Good.
a little bit of a backstory here. So I have gone on to various Facebook groups, one of which was the Thomas would remember called a group called the Atheist Experience, which I thought was defunct, but it basically kind of is. It's not the same Facebook group it was years ago. They really don't even care as much. The admins before would just, if you said anything slightly off, they would just, be all up on you. But anyways, I have challenged people to basically, counter my arguments, especially my paper, How the Presumption of Atheism by Way of Semiotic Square of Opposition Leads to Semantic Collapse, because to date, no atheist has refuted it. None. Nobody. They say it's wrong, whatever, but they never give me the page number or where it's at. So Chris here was kind enough to step up. He's one of the first, I think, from that group. Maybe the second. I think maybe the second, but definitely one of the first few. To say, hey, I'll have a civil conversation with you on your debate topics and discussions and paper. And I'm like, cool, that's awesome. So I want to introduce Chris. Hi, Chris. So you give me your story on this and how this kind of came about, and then we can kind of go into my arguments.
How you want to know how I became an atheist, or
no, how we decided to have this little discussion on my arguments.
Oh yeah, well, that was on Facebook. You just posted some things about what you were doing, and I started to chat with you, and you told me about your paper and on the Academia website, I believe.
Yeah, Academic EDU.
I was, I'm a layman at this stuff, man. I really just an old retired truck driver, but I think I followed your paper enough. But my question with what when you started it, and I think I kind of get it now, but I think that the foundation is kind of, I don't know, ambiguous a little bit, where you just went on to the weak atheism and the weak theism and the weak atheism. I just think that well, I don't know. That's a tough connection for me, because it's like, for me, it is pretty finite. Other than the agnostic, I mean, I'm all for that middle zone there with the agnosticism, but I don't know that there's really any other level of that when you went into the weak, because a weak theist really is still a theist, and a weak atheist is really not an atheist.
Okay, well, okay, so let's dive into that, because first, I don't really accept the premises between weak and strong. I'm not a big fan of that. That came about by basically a guy named George Smith, who was not actually a philosopher. He actually dropped out of, I think, the University of Arizona, and another guy named Michael Martin. They were kind of pushing this whole weak and strong. Anthony Flew was pushing it, and Stephen Bullivant pushes it. But really, the difference between a strong and weak is where the negator's at. It really is somebody who, instead of saying it is, I believe this, rather than I do not believe this. So it's basically the negators on the predicate for weak, and on the proposition mostly for strong. So when somebody says that their atheism is broken down into weak and strong, what they're saying is there's the strong atheist who's actually advocating there is no God, right? Making that assertion, making that claim. And the weak atheist who just says that they don't believe. That's how they're differentiating it. I don't like those terms. That's why my paper shows the problems with those terms, because I've literally proven in logic that a weak atheist, an agnostic, and a weak theist have the same logical position. It's not epistemically exactly the same, and I fully acknowledge that, but there are no logical differences if you do not have a positive epistemic status. And that's basically just logic speak for, if you don't make the assertion there's a God or not a God, you have no belief either way, which is generally colloquially and in philosophy understood as agnosticism. So if the atheist says, I do not believe in God, but I'm not making the claim there is no God, how is that any different than a weak atheist or a weak theist or agnostic? They all have that same exact logical position. I'm not making a positive claim, therefore I just don't believe something. In which case the atheist is saying, I don't believe the theist, and the theist is saying, I don't believe the atheist proposition. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but I mean, like I might have mentioned this to you before, atheism doesn't exist without theism. I mean, if you don't have that initial belief in God, the atheist doesn't even exist, and the agnostic's not even necessary. Agnostic would be the foundation of all of it. Somebody that just doesn't care. Somebody that just doesn't
Well, that's more apathy.
bother with either one. Pardon me?
That's more apathy. There's a position called apathy, which is
Yeah,
or an
but
apathist. But let's say everybody here, let's say everybody on the planet didn't believe in God. Would atheists just not exist? No, of course not. Atheist and theism are coextensial. If you have atheism, you have theism. Sure. You have theism, you have atheism. So they're dependent upon each other because they're just contradictions of each other. They're complete opposites of each other, right? So if God exists, then we can say that theism is true, and we say God doesn't exist, we can say atheism is true if it's propositional. But weak atheism, the position that atheism is merely not a lack of belief, cannot be true or false because it's non-truth apt. So if God doesn't exist, you can't say atheism is true in the new atheist movement or the lack of belief position because it's not propositional. It makes no sense. I would like to say whether atheism is true or not. I want to find out if atheism is true or not. If God exists, I want him to come down and say, hey, look, atheism is false. Theism is true. Okay, great. But that can never happen with the atheist experience and the new atheist way of looking at atheism. But do you agree that even if everybody stopped believing in God, atheists would still exist? There's still people out there going, hey, look, there is no God. Let me explain to you why, right?
I guess. Well, I guess basically what I was saying was that without the initial belief in God, the atheist wouldn't exist. I mean, the way it is now, if everybody just stopped believing in God, you could possibly say, there's atheists do exist. But
is that true though? Is that true though, Chris? Think about that.
I don't know.
Does anybody have to assert there's a God to say there isn't one? If no one ever asserted there's a God, if the entire history of mankind, not a single person had said God exists, but they came up with the concept of it, right? Let's say there's we'll just use like leprechauns, right? Some people say leprechauns exist, but for the most part, people will agree that leprechauns don't exist. So if no one ever said leprechauns existed, but it was just some kind of mythos, but I say, hey, I believe leprechauns don't exist, I still have that belief, right? So atheist would still exist even if nobody ever asserted there's a God. Now, I would agree they wouldn't exist if there wasn't a God concept. That's true. But there's a difference. See the difference?
I mean, you did the same. I mean, basically the same thing would be, believing in Santa Claus. I mean, if we talk about the elves or leprechauns or whatever, but, I think that even as ambiguous as religion is, I think atheism is the same. A lot of people just get into their own head and my brother claims to be an agnostic, but it's only because he doesn't want to believe in religion. It's not that he doesn't want to believe in God. He just doesn't want to believe in religion.
That's more like antitheism, though. Antitheism is the position that religion holds, makes a society less axiologically valuable. So there's protheism and there's antitheism. Protheism says religion adds to society, or at least, makes it neutral. And antitheism would be the position that religion or the belief in God itself is antithetical to the aspirations of society to have a flourishing. So it has a negative axiological value. Some people have said that, antitheism is merely the belief that God doesn't exist, which is ridiculous because the opposite of antitheism is not theism, actually. The opposite of antitheism is actually protheism. Just like the opposite of anti-hero is not a hero. An anti-hero is a hero. And they don't understand that just because there's the word anti doesn't mean it's anti. The opposite of anti-theism is theism. The opposite of anti-theism is protheism.
Right. Well, I think it's more like anti-dogma, really, because that's all it really is. That's what I see belief as, is just different levels of dogma. It doesn't matter what God you want to believe in or whatever. It's just like the Muslims and Jews and Christians all believe in the God of Abraham, but they all believe in it. It's not the same God, but they all go back to Abraham. And it's just this, it's like I said, it's ambiguous, it's dogma. And I think that's basically what my brother's saying. He just doesn't want to believe in all that crap. Why are there 15,000 different Christian religions in the United States? And I think over 25,000 more around the United States, around the world. I mean, so
let me dive into your position real quick. First, did you read my paper? You read it, didn't you? I know you looked.
Like I said, I'm not as. I mean, I read it, and now I understand a little bit about the semiotic square. And cool. I looked at I might have mentioned to you in our chats and all that, but I kind of looked at, I thought this guy was got to be a physicist, basically, because that's the way I looked at your.
Well, I'm told in the atheist experience that I'm incompetent. inept. I don't know what to talk about. I'm a fraud. Because it's funny because if somebody claims somebody's wrong, normally, you have the ability to ask them, okay, what am I wrong about? And if they don't want to show it, then you can just, dismiss them.
Sure.
I do agree with Hitchens razor when it comes to that, right?
Right.
It is a good little rule of thumb. Do I think it always applies? No. Do I think you always should dismiss things without evidence? No. There should be times you should accept things without evidence, but that's a completely different subject. But it is a good rule of thumb. If somebody tells me I'm wrong, and they can't demonstrate it, or they show a complete lack of the ability to do so, then I'm just going to, kind of ignore them. But then they mostly get personal. But I'm told that I don't know basic logic, even though I've had multiple PhDs, examined my arguments, and so far not a single one has found a logical error. So that's pretty, interesting. But let me ask you, Chris. So do you take the position that there is no God, like gods are all imaginary?
I'm more of the I don't
Okay.
know. The thing about it is, I can always go back and say, look, I don't know who tipped the first domino, which is what it really is. It becomes cause and effect, casual science from the very beginning, Big Bang. But who tipped that first domino? And so, I don't know, and I don't really. I mean, until somebody tells me that an intelligent, magical being did that, there's just no way that I can believe in something like that. I mean,
I totally get that, and that's actually well stated. They call that the prime mover, right? The first cause.
Sure,
mover.
Yeah,
in
exactly.
the Aristotelian or there's more Thomistic speak, but
right.
But yeah, and I agree with that. But we're not really talking about knowledge, right? So it's not a matter of what you know or don't know. We're talking about beliefs. Like I believe the Christian God doesn't exist, right? That is my belief. I don't merely lack a belief in it. I believe that it doesn't exist. I'm willing to justify that belief. But for the initial movement, like you said, I'm agnostic in the global sense because I don't have the belief that there are no gods. I kind of lean that way, obviously, but an atheist who said, look, all gods are imaginary, I'm not willing to make that claim because the initial conditions only have a certain amount of possibilities. And so I haven't been convinced there's no first cause that is an intentional being that I'm going to cause a God. But that's a very, very nuanced philosophical position, right? That's not your average person talking about philosophy. These are things that, actual philosophers really dive into. So I take a much more deeply profound philosophical approach. But you still would say that, your belief is, as of right now, you believe all gods are imaginary. So you believe that the first cause is probably some kind of natural thing, right?
I would lean towards that, mostly because all of the explanations so far has been in a physical, scientific sense.
Yeah, no, and so that's perfectly rational. Perfectly rational. And I lean that way myself, but I'm just not convinced it is natural because of my understanding of the topic. And so I would put you as an actual atheist, a full-on atheist. What to be, colloquial, some people call it a strong atheist. Would that be fair? Or do you?
I don't know. I'm pretty convinced. You got to understand. It's not very long since I claimed this. So,
would you tend
I literally back in here.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, no, I don't like to say agnostic. I think reading a lot about Thomas Jefferson influenced me a lot. When he started to talk, he would mention nature's God, and he didn't believe in any. He just thought the Bible was a pile of shit, basically, but he did make his own Bible, and it was a lot of what Jesus said and what he did. And mostly a lot of it was. I was amazed at how much it was against the Pharisees.
Yes.
And then I had to find out what the Pharisees were, and then I understand that he was basically Jesus was fighting against this physical government, corruption with legal government and businesses all combined into one with the Pharisees, and he just railed against.
No question. No question. At most, he might have been a deist, but okay. So let me ask you this. Here's the proposition: all gods are imaginary, or no, the universe is devoid of gods. That's the proposition. The universe is devoid of gods. There's three rational epistemic dispositions you can have. You can believe that, you can disbelieve it, which means to believe false, or you can have no position either way. So which of those three I'm not trying to pigeonhole you. I'm just trying to get a general idea. No. Which one of those would you take? That you believe that the universe is devoid of gods, you disbelieve it, which means that you believe there is a God, or you just really don't have a position either way?
Yeah, I think it's devoid of gods. I might even go back to that Carl Sagan thing. Was that
very fair? I appreciate that. So your position, you would agree that your position is different than mine, right? I have the neutral position. You have the affirmative. Okay.
Yeah.
Now in Christianity, we both agree we're both affirm there is no Christian God, right? We both make that claim, correct?
Oh yeah,
yeah, because then that's entailed by the fact that you believe it's devoid of gods.
Yeah, I don't think that any of it is.
Okay, so let's dive into that. So my paper shows why we don't want to use similar terms, because if you have atheism as both the position of believing there's no God and not believing that there is one, then theists can make that exact same move. It's coextensial. So if you have weak atheism and weak theism, then the theist can say, look, strong theism is the belief there's a God, and weak theism is the belief there is the non-belief of the position that there is no God. That's the exact same argument. There is no difference. That's why you get weak theism, because to argue weak atheism without allowing weak theism is absolutely the fallacy of special pleading.
But like you said, like like the square just showed, basically it just falls into agnostic.
Correct. That's the semantic collapse. That's exactly what semantic collapse is. When you start using it, so let's say I don't know if I got any new atheists in here. I know Outgoing Stroke certainly isn't. He agrees with me wholeheartedly. But let's say Joshua here down here. I'm going to pick on Joshua. I've invited you guys to speak, by the way. But let's say Joshua says, "Hey, look, I merely do not believe in God, right? But I'm not making a positive claim." Well, that's no different than a theist saying, well, I'm not making a positive claim there is a God. I'm making the statement that I don't believe that there isn't one. It is the exact same thing. So why would you want atheism to represent both strong and weak, right? Because then the weak atheist, just as Joshua, can say, well, I don't believe in God, and I'm going to call that atheism. Okay, well, now the theist can say, well, I don't believe there isn't a God, and I'm going to call that theism. Is it exact same argument? Exactly the same. There's no difference. And then, of course, as I prove in my paper, they both collapse into agnostic. Same exact thing. So now you have a term, agnostic, which represents weak atheism and weak theism, but now weak atheism is being called atheist. So the theist can also call weak theism theism. So now you have a person like myself who's apparently an atheist, an agnostic, and a theist. Thus, semantic collapse. That's my argument. My paper proves this. And I don't know why people are telling me that my logic is wrong. They can maybe disagree with the conclusion that it is semantic collapse because that's, a terminological thing, but they cannot argue the logic is wrong on it. The logic is spot on, valid, and sound.
Yeah, I mean, I know, but one guy you were commenting on was said he just it's either atheist or theist. That's what you are. And I know you had were combating with that. And I agree with you. I mean, there's definitely that middle zone, but like I said, it's a lot of people are just vague on their own personal beliefs, and it becomes truly ambiguous. Like I said, it's hard to pigeonhole what people are, I guess, until you actually discuss it with them, And I'm definitely one that doesn't believe at all in anything mystical.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's for sure.
Yeah,
and the only mystical part of our reality is through physics and science and dark matter. I just those are things that are the things that we just don't know.
I agree with that. Well, let me ask you this. So let's look at the logic a little bit, though. I want to break this down a little bit, and I would love to get Outgoing Stroke up here. I don't know why he's not speaking. So and how did you? So let's look at some basic logic. I think you would agree there's something called the law of negation, right? A or not A.
Okay.
Correct?
Yeah.
It's also a part of the law of Supplemental. But A or not A. So if I instantiate A with something, I get A or not A. I get dog or not dog, cat or not cat, right?
Sure.
That should be contentious, even though I'm told I'm wrong on that. And I even posted on X today. I'm like, really? I'm wrong on that. That's just stupid. All right. So if you have theist, if you instantiate A with theist, what do you get? You get theist or not theist, correct?
Right.
And that would be, let's break that down for strong and weak. I can say, let's assume the same descriptive definition for theism. The belief that there is a God or the lack of belief that there is no God. That would be strong and weak combined. Okay? That's a description. It's not a prescription. It's a description. And it's accurate too, because all theists who believe in God lack a belief that there isn't. So that is an accurate description of a theist. But when we instantiate that, we get believes God exists or does not believe God exists, correct? That's the logic. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. That's A or not A, right? So you believe there's a God or you don't believe there's a God, correct?
A or B, right?
A or not A, not A or B, but not A.
Okay.
Not
A or not A, right? You're right.
Correct. So let's do that with atheists. And this is where I think a lot of new atheists, their heads explode. They can't process this. They shut down. Let's do that with atheism. So you either believe there's no God or you do not believe there's a God, correct?
You believe there's no God.
Or you do not believe there's no God. It is not the case, right? You can add, it is not the case to any proposition to make the negation of it.
If
right?
you do not
it is
believe
raining.
okay, if you do not believe there's no God, that opens that, then you're either agnostic or theist.
That is correct, logically. Yeah, you know this. See, you don't have to. You don't have to be super smart in logic to be able to do critical thinking like you just did. You literally applied critical thinking. I'm so happy right now. That's exactly right. But
for me, I would just call it common sense. Yeah.
Well, dude, do you realize how limited common sense is? Yes, but let's look at that statement. You either believe there's a God or you do not believe there's a God. So you have A or not A. If you have A as believe there's no God, right? Then what is not A? Do not believe there's no God. And we're going to call that atheist or not atheist. So a not atheist is merely somebody who does not believe there's no God. So how is it possible that now atheist is now the position that you do not believe there's no God and you don't believe there is a God, which is what? Agnostic.
Sure.
So when they start labeling A and not A in that sentence, both as atheist, then you're an atheist either way, which makes no sense. If I believe that the people that are saying that there's a dichotomy between theism and atheism where there's no other choices, this is the problem they run into. Now, if I ask somebody, well, you either believe there's a God or you don't believe there's a God, the new atheist goes, well, they're both atheist. No, one's atheist and one's not atheist by the law of negation. See how they run afoul to logic when they start making these weird semantic substitutions? It's called opacity in propositional theory. Proposition is either transparent or opaque, which means that you substitute it with something else, it's going to retain its truth value or it won't. There's a problem there because you're no longer keeping the truth value when you say theist or not theist. I'm going to call not theist atheist because now you have theist versus atheist equal true, which is not correct logically.
Okay, so what category would you put the pantheist in?
Well, I mean, it depends. There's different variations of pantheism, deism. If they think that the universe has intentionality, then I'm going to put them under theism.
Right.
If they think it's just a natural thing, then I'm going to put it under atheism.
Right.
So it could be either.
Okay. Yeah, I got you. That's what I'm saying. It's just it really just comes down to that dogma thing, like I mentioned. So you can be any of these things: the theist, the atheist, and the agnostic, and it really comes down to your own personal dogma, and what and how you believe in God or how you don't believe in God. I could say
I agree.
Instead of saying that God doesn't exist, I would say that God never existed. Never.
Well, that would follow logically, right? That would entail.
Sure, but
no, not necessarily. No. I'm sorry. Let me correct that. I can literally say, God doesn't exist, but he used to. That would make sense. So it doesn't entail that,
right?
Right. And a deist, a pantheist would actually argue that God became the universe, right? There's
exactly.
God, and he died and became the universe. A pantheist could argue that.
Well, I think more in the sense like way Carl Sagan explained it, to where it was. The intelligence of human beings is actually the intelligence of the universe because it's the only intelligence we know of at the moment. So this is the intelligence of the universe that came from the stardust of the Big Bang. So we're that 50 billion year old carbon that's now thinking and examining itself. So, we're not gods, but we are the only God that really exists as far as intelligence goes in the universe.
There's a brilliant line from the show Babylon 5, and it was Delon that said it, I think. And she said, we are the way the universe knows itself. And I didn't understand how profound that was at the time, but later on in life, I realized how profound that statement really is, because we are stardust and we are able to apprehend the universe in the anthropic principle. And because we're able to apprehend the universe and we're part of the universe, right? Because we're a subset of the universe, we literally are the way the universe apprehends itself. We are the universe's intelligence. That's mind-blowing when you think about that. Now, I get a lot of people get into some, pandeism or panpsychism kind of stuff, and that's not what I'm arguing. But logically and rationally, we are the way the universe apprehends itself. Absolutely.
Exactly. I actually, it's funny. I mean, when I was a kid, I don't know if you know anything about Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, but
oh yes,
but they did. Yeah, they did a song that said, we are stardust, we are golden, we are 50 billion-year-old carbon." And then they talk about getting back to the garden, but basically that kind of stuff influenced me a lot when I was a kid. And you start to think about, man, we are just, we're just from the beginning of the Big Bang, and we're all that matter put together, and then we developed this intelligence. So this is the only intelligence that the universe created. We know. I mean, that we know.
And that's
And so
is that something for the theist side though, a little bit? I mean, I'm not giving them a full tick, but there's a little bit of notch in their side that why is it we are the only intelligence in the universe? I mean, that's weird. It is something that needs to be explained, right? There needs to be an explanation for that if you satisfy PSR, which I don't really adhere to. But it is an unresolved question in philosophy. It's one of the biggest questions, if not the biggest, why we are here.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that we are all that we know. We are all we know, and until we know something else, which is what we do, and we are the universe's intelligence observing itself. And if we find another intelligent being, then we can just put that all together, and we've all understand that we've all been doing the same thing,
and
only maybe in different perspectives.
And in pantheism and panentheism, where God is the universe and beyond the universe, and panentheism is kind of making a comeback too. But in those two theories, if we are the intelligence of the universe, then we are the mind of God, which is something what people argue for idealism. Now, again, I don't argue that, but it's not irrational. It actually follows by logical entailment that if we're the intelligence of the universe, then we are, and the universe is God, we are part of the mind of God, if not the mind of God. So I don't have a problem with those types of arguments because they follow, right? Do I have to accept them? No, of course not. But they're not, way out to lunch illogical arguments. But let me ask you this, Chris, why is it that when I'm in these groups, because you see what happens in like the atheist experience, why do these people jump on me and make things so personal when I'm arguing logic that all you have to do is show the logical error? And I got people telling me that A and not A, and you instantiate with the A or not atheist, that's wrong. Where do you go with somebody like that, man? What do I do to explain to people, look, you're so dumb, you don't even know how dumb you are?
Well, see, that's what I'm saying. Find your stoic side on that one, because you feel that people
I have.
People trigger you. It's really, you just gotta. I mean, I could never really understand that. Why atheists seem so angry, especially on that Facebook site. And there's a couple of them too. They're always angry, man. They're always like, And
I think I know why. I'll tell you my theory after you're done, but I think I have a reason.
It might be the same as mine. I mean, because I look at all the Christianity and just the war and and then Madison even said, one of the things that they wanted separation of the church and state was because of the blood-soaked Europe that Christianity and Islam left behind. They just didn't want to bring that onto these shores. And that is a lot of what makes atheists, I think, angry, is because they see the evil in the people that are really introducing or trying to influence their religions on and push it on to other people. And I think that makes atheists angry.
I don't discount that, but that is not all the reason why I think.
Okay.
My reasoning is based upon a lot of experience with dealing with these types of atheists. My reasoning is that many of them don't know what the hell they're talking about, and they know they don't know what they're talking about, but they get accolades when they just insult people. It's a hive-minded mentality. I've seen it far too many times. Look what happens when one person starts insulting me. Other people join in, and oh yeah, Steve is an idiot. Steve wants attention. Steve's a narcissist. Steve's logic is wrong. None of them ever demonstrate it, right? It's a hive-mind mentality. They just want to be able to feel like they're validated because they don't know how to refute my arguments. I mean, seriously, most people will not be able to look at my paper and read it and understand it. Just like I can't look at most, papers in physics, even though I have a background in physics. I have a training in nuclear reactor technologies. I studied physics. I studied some math. I can't read most physics papers and understand them. They're just out of my limit because the math is too high. I didn't get to that level of math of advanced differential equations. I barely was able to do the basic differential equations that I had to do. And they were very basic. I mean, very, very basic. They were first order, and I think we touched the second order a couple times. But it was very, very basic stuff. It was basically intro into intro. but we had to learn, basic calculus. In order to operate a nuclear power plant, you have to understand the math behind it, right? Especially derivatives and time rate of change, because you have neutron fluxes, and these neutron fluxes change over time, and you have to understand how that works. But these people, they don't even understand math. I swear to you, dude, I have an objective evaluation of people's ability to do basic math when they tell me I'm wrong when I argue something like 0.99 repeating equals 1. That is an objective fact that any mathematician will tell you, except for Jay Waddleberg, because he's a finest. But other than that, most mathematicians accept at least some kind of type of infinity, whether it be potential or limited actualized infinity, which I do. I think there is a limited actual infinity. I don't think there's a full actual infinity, but that gets into Cantor's proofs and other things. But when they don't understand that relationship is true, and they're telling me that I'm wrong on math, that I can literally prove using math, and you could read about and go to wiki, and in fact, one of the problems they have you solve in real analytics when you study real numbers is that they have to prove that equality, that 0.99 repeating equals 1. Yeah. You have to literally prove it using math. And so they'll tell me that my logic is wrong, and then they'll tell me my math is wrong when it's objectively they're wrong. And they get so angry about it, Chris. And they get angry about it because they cannot demonstrate their claim, and they start throwing out all these ridiculous things that they're absolutely wrong about. And I think it makes them angry. And then they project that onto other people. How many people in those groups think I'm angry with them when I'm talking to them? I'm not, ever. I may get a little frustrated, but I don't have any real anger. I'm not emotionally involved in any of this.
Yeah, but you can. It's like you can almost tell sometimes, and I think a lot of that is just it's in their own head. Like you can just think somebody with the way they're commenting is there's an angry comment or whatever. But if you got a minute, just a quick story I want to tell you that I used to go hunting in Pennsylvania, and it was 4 of us or 5 of us, and we went to this one restaurant up there. I'm talking in the middle of nowhere in Pennsylvania. So these are country folk. And we were sitting there, we're all going to order a Bubba burger at this place. And this friend of mine, John, he says, I want my Bubba burger, but I want it sans onions. And I looked at him and I said, John, do you have any idea? Do you know where you're at? Do you have any idea where you're at? The waitress had no idea what he meant. He meant no onions. Nobody speaks French up there. But I'm just saying that's what I think of you like that a little bit. You understand?
What? So no. What did he say though?
I think when you put that stuff forward to some people, like you said, they just don't understand it. And you're like, and I would look at you and say, look, Steve, what are you doing? You know what I mean? You're talking to people that just don't get it.
Well, no, and I get that. Why do you think I talk to other people on other forums, right? I mean, those Facebook groups, I'm real aware they're not going to understand me, but they're telling me that I'm wrong, and I'm like, okay, if I'm wrong, show me. That's all. I mean, if I want to talk to intelligent people, I'll talk on X, which is my primary. But like this one person just wrote me in that group. They're like, telling me I'm a terrible communicator, and that I should be able to write them to. Like this person said, it may interest you to know that he stated to his PhD students, talking about Carl Sagan, they should write their thesis so a 5-year-old could understand. Yeah, okay. I've read a lot of theses, and they're not written that way for a 5-year-old. Now, my argument is, why do I want to have a conversation about physics or math or anything like that to a 5-year-old? You don't write papers on a 5-year-old level. I'm sorry, you just don't. My paper isn't for the lay person. My argument is for people that actually understand this, that can explain it to lay people. Like I can break it down to the most basics, and I can't explain to a 5-year-old. But why do I do that to a grown adult who's telling me I'm wrong? Why would I waste my time? They're telling me I'm wrong. Okay, then you have the onus to explain wrong. If they said, hey, Steve, I'm not saying you're wrong, but could you explain it to me on a level I will understand it? Absolutely. I'll spend hours, and I have spent hours doing that with people. But that's not what they're doing. They're not saying, hey, help me understand it. They're saying you're wrong. And at that point, I have no obligation to explain to them anything. They have they need to explain to me why I'm wrong, but they won't even give me a page number.
Right. All I could do was I know nothing about that stuff, to be honest with you, but I mean, it still have that ambition sometimes to figure it out. And and I can usually, or at least get a fundamental idea of what's going on. And then I like to, like I said, the first thing I read was the was the two guys, the one doctors that analyzed your paper, and that's the first. That's why I didn't even read your paper before. I read their comments on it just so I could get kind of a just get like a guideline to what you were putting down there. Just because I figured they would make it more readable, or give me that table of contents, even, So
yeah, well, I also did you read the supplement? Because I actually wrote a visual supplement. A guy that was in one of these Facebook groups. He wasn't in the atheist group. He was a little bit better group, and he said, "Hey, look, I'll look at your paper." And I admit, I said, "Hey, look, I don't think you understand it, because that's not meant to be arrogant. It's just that 99% of the people don't." But he proved me wrong, and I corrected that. I even made a formal apology to him, and I said, "Look, I apologize. I was wrong. My belief that you wouldn't understand it was wrong. I fixed my positions, right?"
yeah,
But not only did he understand it, he wrote a review. He had a BH honors in the subject, and he wrote a review and said, "Yeah, this paper is correct." He's like, it could actually, add to the substantive body of philosophy, because it does refute and give reasons to reject Flu's argument that he wrote in 1972. And that was very nice of him to write that review.
Yeah, I just thought, I wasn't gonna make really any kind of negative comment on something I didn't know enough about. But I mean, that's why I decided to actually look at your paper, and to say I read through it all the way.
That's fine. You don't have to follow it verbatim. It's just, I think you get the gist of it. Just like when I read a paper on physics, I'm not going to go and validate all the math, right?
Right. I thought the basics of it was the semiotic square.
Yes,
and that's what I focused on.
Well, and that's how I talk to people when they want to argue it with the semiotic square. Like, where do you want to start? And they can't do it. I've had to date no atheist ever has able to refute my argument starting with the semiotic square. Not one.
Right. I might even mention to you in comments before, like they said, why wouldn't you do that semiotic square and then do the same analysis on Georges Lemaitre?
With Big Bang,
the Belgian priest, the Belgian priest whose numbers actually calculated the Big Bang and the expansion of the universe.
I thought it was Lemaitre. So, is it Lemaitre? I don't speak French or Belgian.
I mean, I was talking to a Catholic station one time, and I
always thought it was Lemaitre, but I don't know. We
the
all
microbiology. The microbiologist I was talking to called him Lemaitre. So, but it's
tomato,
it's
tomato.
Belgian. So.
Yeah, tomato.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's just
not a hill to die on.
Because I called them up to talk about. They had a scientist on. I said, "Okay, well, a Catholic scientist. Yeah, let's talk about this. How can there be a Catholic physicist that actually discovered the Big Bang? The secular community takes a hold of it and says, okay, now your Catholicism doesn't exist because you have a Catholic priest that proved the Big
Which
Bang."
had nothing to do with Catholic. Lemaitre didn't use Catholicism to make his theory. He used science. So any other beliefs, he could have believed in aliens. He could have believed, he was Jesus. It wouldn't have mattered. This is what I'm saying. You can have false beliefs, but if your math and logic and physics is solid, that's all that should matter. I really don't care if Georges Lemaitre or Lemaitre was, some kind of nut job, and he believed the most strangest things, like I don't know, just like leprechauns. I don't care. He got the Big Bang correct. Period.
Yeah, I know. I wanted to. I was focused more on the conflict in his actual.
He was able to rationalize it, though. Just like other scientists, they can rationalize it. I'm friends with Dr. Hugh Ross. He accepts a 13.9 billion year old universe, but he's a Christian, right?
Sure.
There's some caveats there, but
right.
Let me ask you this though. Okay.
Yeah. So he respects a different dogma. I mean, that's what that is. That really the dogma is what defines people between even though they're in the same religion, they might have a different belief inside that same religion. I mean, you'd be sitting next to somebody in the same pew, and they're not believing what the preacher's saying in the exact same way that you are. But
they're all. And I like the way Hugh and the Reasons Believe put it, because some people argue, hey, there's science and there's religion. And when you're looking at the natural world, you would need to use science. That doesn't mean science is ahead of God. What it means to them is there's the book of science and there's the book of God. And they should, relate to each other. There should be no opposition. But science is a way of understanding the universe. And so if you scientifically can show something, that means we misunderstood something about God. That's how they look at it, rather than science has to come first and then religion. They think they're coexistential. They think they're related to each other, such that science is a way to understand God's universe. I don't have a problem with that, right? But there are other people out there who say, well, if it's scientifically wrong means that God doesn't exist. That's nowhere does that make sense, because science doesn't even have the ability to address the God claim because of methodological naturalism. But
I mean,
they recognize that science will show something to be wrong, then they should accept that and understand that maybe they got something wrong about God's view of things.
So I know a lot about, I heard the philosophy where, God really only exists in the gaps that science left.
Yeah, it's the God of the gaps argument for science. Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, that kind of makes sense to me. But, because it comes from, I mean, God, to me, they come from ignorance and fear. And if you just don't know, you're just going to say, well, some magical being did that.
Yes.
Like the lightning comes down and starts the tree on fire. Well, that's got to be God, because we don't know how that happened.
And I accept that. I believe that. I believe that, dude. I believe that gods came about as an invention of man to explain natural phenomenon. However, that doesn't preclude the overall universe as a natural phenomenon to God explain, because just because God, I don't think, obviously explain things like thunder and lightning, God can be the explanation for the universe. And I think that is not irrational, because there's only three really choices to make, or the three possibilities. You have infinite regress, you have contingent brute fact, or you have necessary being. There's not, I don't think of any other options. And if you choose contingent being or infinite regress, you don't satisfy the principle of sufficient reason. The only one that does is necessary being. And I don't subscribe to the principle of sufficient reason, so it doesn't matter to me. But necessary being is absolutely possible. Now, does that necessary being have to have intentionality? No. Can it? Yes. And we have seen intelligence, make things. So the fact that we are the intelligence of the universe, it doesn't preclude a God. And I cannot rationally rule it out, unfortunately, because you only have three options.
But you claim to be an agnostic then, correct?
Correct. That's why I'm an agnostic, because I cannot rationalize ruling out any kind of intentional being as a necessary being, and I'm just going to call that God, right? That's all.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different definitions of agnostic. I always thought of it more like just someone who doesn't know, doesn't care, and won't even argue either the atheist or the theist facts, because it just doesn't exist. Somebody's just, like you said, apathetic. Somebody who can resort their own mind back to the innocence of it all, like prior to all that, that God stuff.
Yeah, that's not how the term originally came about, though. The term agnosticism came about by Thomas Henry Huxley, right, in the 19th century. And what he used it for was to describe the position of not believing there's a God. Well, he didn't especially do it. What he used was called a normative epistemic principle, meaning that you should never believe something without proper scientific grounding. It was early form of strong evidentialism, and even scientism, and even scientific naturalism. So his view was basically your belief should be predicated upon science. And I agree with him to some degree, but not fully. But he thought that theists and atheists of his day were not justified to make any claims about God, whether there be knowledge or belief. Right? He thought the atheist was not justified to say there is no God, just like he thought that a theist is not justified to say there is a God. So he said he had no position between the two. And so he felt like he didn't have a name for his position. He called that agnosticism, and he established it as a methodology, as a principle. And so that had, come to become archaic. And over time, agnosticism divided into the epistemological version of it and the ontological version of it. The epistemological version of agnosticism is the position on the knowability of gods, which is still defunct and archaic, although some still use it. But now in modern philosophy, it's strictly ontological or philosophical, as in the philosophical position of having no belief either way. And that's the same inside and outside philosophy. If I read a news article and it says such and such was agnostic on the issue, they're not talking about God. They're just saying that person had no position either way. They're not talking the person had no knowledge of the position. It has nothing to do with knowledge in the psychological or ontological sense. It just means that a person is undecided. They have some kind of epistemic doubt that is preventing them from making a conclusion and they suspend judgment on it. And the issue is, if you suspend judgment on a proposition, you suspend judgment on the negation of the proposition, because it's called closed under negation. So the agnostic is closed under negation, that he suspends judgment on the proposition there's a God, which means he also suspends judgment on the proposition that there is no God, which is, again, just the conjunction of the weak atheist and the weak theist position. Therefore, weak theism, and agnostic, again, same logical position. See how it all goes back to logic? And people telling me that I don't know what I'm talking about, yet I do. I seriously do. And they think, oh, Steve's just being a narcissist or braggadocio. No, this is simple stuff. If I knew 1 + 1 + 2, 1 + 1 = 2, that doesn't make me a philosophical genius, right? I'm not claiming to be an expert in anything. I have a lay understanding of this stuff, even though I do, I have college, education, but I still treat myself as a, intro level stuff. And so I always argue my arguments are basic level, because if you can't understand basic level, how would you understand level 300 stuff? Now, my paper is level 300, give or take. I've actually asked people, and I've had AI analyze it, and I've asked, experts, and they're like, yeah, it's probably, something you would probably write in early 300, I think. So I don't know if you took any college courses.
No. The only thing I have done in that respect is with the library, and I've watched some of the great courses that are on video, and those are basically just 25-minute lectures. Some of them there's 20 lectures, some of them there's 10, and mostly on history.
No, that's awesome. Awesome.
But those things are, those are free from the library, by the way.
So I don't know. I titled this, Atheist tries to refute my argument, which you kind of did try to refute it, but at the same token, I think you accept my arguments now.
Yeah, I mean, I do. I do. I mean, I understand what you were saying, but like I said, I thought, I might have mentioned to you before, I just thought it was a lot of a lot of hair splitting on a really a vague subject with flu. Because I even thought that flu was, when I read that, what his philosophy was, I really think that, like I said, he didn't focus his analogy on God. He focused it on the theist, where he was disputing what they say, and not focusing on what that God exists at all.
He was arguing from the presumption of atheism, from the position of onus probandi, which is a legal term, but unfortunately you cannot use that to apply to propositions, because all you have to do is state something in the negation. So if you think that theists have not made their burden of proof and you don't accept it, that's fine, but you'd also have reasons to why you didn't accept it. It shouldn't be based upon or predicated merely because somebody didn't make their argument. It can, but I don't believe any atheist out there merely doesn't accept God's existence because theists haven't made their argument. They have other reasons for that. I cannot believe that an atheist has never heard of things like divine hiddenness, logical problem of evil. There's two of them. Or arguments against the existence of God. I just refuse to believe that an atheist does not have a single solitary positive reason to why they take the position they do, rather than, you haven't convinced me. That's not an argument. And that's, a matter of fact, it's a tautology to say, I don't believe there's a God because I'm not convinced. Those mean the same thing. That's a tautological statement. It's not informing anybody of anything. So when I say to somebody, why don't you believe in God? And they say, well, I'm not convinced. That's just rhetoric. That doesn't tell me anything. It's self-explanatory. They're not convinced because they don't believe, right?
I think that the creation of God is really, can be, if you look at it just as man's influence on his own environment, basically is what he's doing. He's using, and a lot of times it became the ego. Like you didn't want to believe that it was over when you die, because your ego is going to push you on to further existence in some mythical world. And I think that's where maybe Flues was coming from, because like I said earlier, God doesn't exist without man's imagination, and that's basically where I'd say it even comes from. And then looking at all just looking at the logic of the universe and our existence, and just the general evil that the human beings put into that. I think without religion, there would have been a lot less evil in the whole world. And I just think that's one reason, I guess, I think I got drove to atheism and started to really analyze my position. And I like that, that you actually helped me come back all the way to that. It never existed. God just never existed. And I see no reason to believe there is a God. And that's exactly the way I look at it. But I want to tell you one thing. My mother died earlier this year, and I want to tell you what, she's a devout Lutheran. That's how I was raised. And if there, for any one reason that I would think, I hope that there's a God, it would be for her. And that's, what I mean? That's like, I think everybody has that kind of influence in their life.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm very sorry to hear about your mom. My mom passed away earlier this year as well. So I definitely empathize with you. My mom was Jewish.
Okay.
And I can understand that, but I think it was, a lot of people develop these needs for gods out of fear and the afterlife out of fear. But my arguments against the afterlife, would be for another day, because again, really extensive, because like, what does it mean to be identity? What would it be to exist in another realm, having just, a minimal amount of years and decades on earth. Let's say you live to 80 to 90 years of age compared to eternity. Who are you in heaven? What will you be doing for, eternity? There's no answers to that, right? Even Christians really don't, they don't know what is your identity? Who are you? Are you going to have the same experiences? Would you have the same familiarity with your family and your friends? And and I don't mean to be disrespectful, because again, my mom passed, but in the afterlife, what would be my relationship to my mom? She had her own life to lead, right? I mean, does it? I mean, in the Christian view, everybody's related anyways, right? So, somebody like, myself and your immediate family, it's one big family, right? So everybody would be treating each other like a family, and it would be nice to see them again. But what about people you dislike? I don't want to see them ever again.
Right. Well, that's the Judeo-Christian belief, though. I mean,
we
all come from Noah, correct? Noah and his family, I believe. So
yes,
I mean,
that's
you can
true.
say
That's
you
true.
can go back to Adam and Eve, but everything was
Well,
destroyed.
I meant in the more Christian sense that there was a pre-existence, and that 1/3 of the host of heavens fell and became demons, and Satan, took them with them, and the rest got sold and bodied and became, mankind through Adam and Eve. Which I think is a complete myth story, right? I believe that was a myth passed down from generation to generation.
I'm gonna say, it sounds like a Terry Brooks novel. I've read some of his stuff. He's a fantasy guy.
Yeah, well, that's another argument against theism, is that it does sound very, very similar to what we know about other mythos, right? There's arguments to be made for that. Why does Christianity stand aside when it sounds, if I'm Hindu and I'm listening to a Christian talk about their God, I'm gonna think that makes no sense, right? That's weird. But if you're a Christian talking about Vishnu, you'd be like, yeah, that just seems kind of weird, right? It's cultural.
Right.
So
sure.
I do want to get somebody up to come up here real quick, because I'm probably going to end this, because I think this was really good, and I want to keep this bite sized, because I will put this on my YouTube channel.
Sure.
But I'll probably have another hangout later on tonight if you're available. But I wanted to get How Did You or Outgoing Stroke up here if they want to come up. Raise your hand or do something, that I know you're still there, because I've invited you all to speak, just to get their input, and then I'm going to wrap it up if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, my wife just came home anyway, so I'm gonna have to go.
Yeah, too. I know you're kind of limited too. So let me get Tomas in here real quick. And Tomas, how are you, my friend? Tomas, I just gave you speaker. Nope. I don't know. Maybe it's not appearing for people. I know Chris had an issue trying to get up here in the first place.
Well, I just didn't know how to do it. I was just, I had no idea how to do it. To remove my,
Okay, Tomas,
my blocking. Yeah.
You have to unmute. There you go. Hey,
Hi,
how you been, my friend?
Hi, Steve. What's is correct pronunciation of your name? Steve?
Steve. Yes, Steve.
Steve. Yes. Yeah. I was listening before, but not in person, and I think you do not understand something about Christianity. Can I tell you?
Sure.
Okay. For instance, if I, a Christian, look at Hinduism, I do not think it's crazy. No, it's some kind of understanding of eternity. It cannot be completely right, but it's not crazy. And I think in other side, what I know about Hinduism is that they do not think Christianity is crazy. They think that God cannot be described, and Christianity, Jesus, is one of some kind of image to describe God, to describe way to God. Then I think you are not right when you think that religion is quietly cultural. It's something deeper in religion.
Well, I do think it's cultural. Now, I'm not trying to stereotype all Christians to have the same view. I'm saying there are Christians out there that do view that way. I mean, you don't have to think Vishnu is crazy, even though you think, Vishnu has 4 arms, right? If I remember correctly. Christians are going to say that's false, though, right? If you're raised Christian, you're going to say that Vishnu doesn't exist because there's no being that has 4 arms. And just like they're going to say, well, Christ may have been a man, but he was not of God. And so they're going to have different views because they are raised a specific cultural way to believe something.
It's not so simply. Because I was studying physics, then maybe some comparison to physics, okay? If you say force of gravity, it's wrong? No, because it's good in Newton theory of gravity. It's wrong in Einstein theory of gravity. But in fact, we do not know what is the correct theory of gravity.
Well, I don't think they're either wrong. They're both not wrong. They both describe what they're meant to describe, right? Newtonian physics is only meant to describe non-relativistic physics. And so it's not wrong. But relativity goes one step further, right? That explains gravity in a much different way, but it works. So Newtonian gravity still works. It just looks at it from a different view, right? Instead of having it as a space-time warpage, it's just a force. So it's not wrong. It's just, I would say, maybe incomplete or just good for what it's supposed to understand, right?
You are right, because physics is a way to understand nature.
Correct,
but
right.
By models, and but try to do the same in religion. For instance, let's take this Adam and Eve myth. If you think that it is the historical truth, you are doing mistake, because it's a spiritual model of realities, of spiritual reality. It's the same like in physics. You in one model can set spirit of gravity. In other model, you are telling about curvature of space. And religion is something similar.
It's similar, but not quite, right? Because I do understand what you're saying. It does hypothesize a potential or possible explanation, but the problem is one, it's not verifiable. It's not experimental. There's nothing you can do, and it's not repeatable. It's not really doing science because, it's hypothesis, sure, but it's definitely nothing that you could ever validate one way or another, right? You couldn't do an experiment to test your hypothesis. So it's not part of inferential statistics or any kind of science, which is experimental in nature.
It's not part of this kind of science. Of course, it's not. But let's think about analogy. Think about game Mario Bros. Very advanced when Mario is artificial intelligence. And tell me how Mario can, by science methods, test if his reality is made by programists.
Well, yeah, but he has no intentional states, right? That's just code running, on a system. That's just all pre-programmed to do if this and then that. If it meets this condition, it does this. There's no intentional thinking going on there. But I do got to wrap this up. Unfortunately, soon. Do you want to try for part 2 later, Thomas?
Okay, maybe.
Awesome.
I hope we have
Yeah, it's
some
always
time.
a pleasure. Yeah, you always drop by, and I appreciate it. But I'm going to wrap this up
It
because I
was-
want to keep it on the topic at hand.
It
But
was
that was
nice
fun.
that you can that you want to talk to me, because I'm always afraid that people which are near the atheist position thinks that they are so clever that any moment talking with a believer is worth
No,
of time.
absolutely. I'm the opposite. I love talking to Christians and atheists. As long as people can be civil and have intelligent discussions, I'm all for that. That's what I do. So I want more Christians. I want more people that disagree with me. I don't want to sit in an echo chamber of people that just agree with me. I know Outgoing Stroke agrees with me. He and I agree on probably the vast majority of things. And I love having him around. But, and I say this, tongue in cheek, it's useless to me. Because I don't want to sit with a bunch of people that all agree with me. I want people that disagree, because that's where you have the best discussions. Outgoing Stroke is going, you don't want me around. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that, it's just, it would get really boring if all I had was people that agree with me, right? And that's why I post in the Facebook group, because I get somebody like Chris occasionally who is intellectually honest and willing to have the discussions. He didn't even have to agree with me, but I respected the fact that he was willing to have the discussion and not be pejorative about it. And because he sees what's happening in these atheist groups, they are angry, they are uneducated, and it's frustrating because I'm a non-believer. Atheists are in my group. You know what I'm saying? They're and so I don't want atheists to look stupid, because that reflects upon all non-believers like myself. And I'm trying to help them not look stupid, but they just refuse to help get that, the help that I'm offering. And this is why theists have a right sometimes to say to atheists, you made a stupid comment, right? It has nothing to do with the existence of God or not, but there's just some objective facts that are true, regardless if you're a theist or an atheist. And they don't recognize that.
Of course, you got many good works. I think it's if I'm right, and I think I'm right, and you meet God in your near future, because our life is short, you will hear this: Steve, you do some good stuff in time your life.
Yeah, look, and I think God, and I'm going to end it with this. If God exists, I do tend to what's called universalism. That would be an honest and fair God would save everybody. There's no such thing as hell. I can't imagine a moral being, and I think hell is 100% man-made created. I think all of it kind of is, obviously, but I think the hell especially was insidious. I think hell was created to control people, because I cannot imagine a benevolent God wanting that for anyone, or to even allow it. And I'll leave it with this, because this is my position as a parent, right? No matter what my daughter ever did, I would not want her to suffer for eternity. And if I have that type of love for my daughter, and God is supposed to be omnibenevolent and love everybody, why would he want that for any of his children? Or why would he allow it for any of his children? He would do everything in his power to prevent that from happening. And he has the power to do that. He's God. He's all powerful, right? And so the all-powerful, all-benevolent, omnipotent, omniscient being, the omni things against the logical problem of evil, is pretty strong. And even with the evidential problem of evil. But anyways, I'm gonna let this end so I can post it to YouTube. Thomas, thank you for coming up. So everybody else listening, appreciate it. Chris, especially, dude. I'm giving you huge props here when I say that you're a breath of fresh air. That you're one of the first intellectually honest people to accept my challenge. You did brilliant. And it's been a while trying to get this happen, and I appreciate your patience on it. Just a lot of stuff has been going on.
Hey, so, it's been fun. I'm gonna hopefully stay in touch, and maybe I can I don't know, come up with some more ideas for you. Sure.
I'm gonna add you. I'm gonna friend you on Facebook too if I haven't already. Okay.
Okay. Sure.
All right, guys. Thanks for all watching this. And if you guys think you can refute my arguments, just talk to me about it. Don't be a dick about it, people. I mean, the atheist experience and the subreddit, our atheism. I'm going to say that the most people in there are absolutely stupid when it comes to atheism, which is really disappointing because there's supposed to be groups about atheism.
Ignorant. Call it ignorant. They're ignorant. Ignorant. They say stupid things because they're ignorant.
I'll say the most are ignorant, but a handful are stupid. Okay, how about that?
All right.
Fair?
I'll give you that.
Right. We'll leave it with that agreement here. So thanks a lot, guys, for watching, and we'll see you later. Bye.
Bye.